Welcome back to The Boy in the Iceberg, the podcast where I, alone apparently now, watch The Legend of Korra. As always, I'm Caleb Ader, joined by no one once again. Harley has come down with a bad case of hemorrhoids, and it has caused an infection to spread to his lymph nodes, and he is just oozing pus from just about every part of his body. So hopefully he can return when he is back in fighting form. But until then, I guess that I'm going to have to take over all the duties on the podcast. We do only have one episode left, so I hope that he can be back by next week, or else I'm just going to have to finish it out by myself. But we probably will have some sort of a event or some guest on the podcast next week. A bit of housekeeping before I start the podcast here. Thank you guys for all of your submissions for last week's challenge. But the winner of the $50 Amazon gift card is on Twitter at Janice75. So at Janice, if you want to hit me up in the DMs or whatever, we will get all that sorted out. Thank you guys again for all of your submissions. I thoroughly enjoyed looking through each and every one of them. But let's get into the podcast. So the first episode that I watched this week was Operation Beifong. And this is what they set up last week. Bolin, Opal, and Lin are going to head off and get Opal and Lin's family back. I think it's Batar Sr., Su Yin, the two twins, and then the weird art kid have been captured by Kuvira, and they're ostensibly being held prisoner. So they're going to go and get them back, and Bolin has decided to go along with them to try to win Opal's heart back. And to tell you the truth, I could not be less interested in the whole Bolin Opal thing. It's dumb in my opinion. But we'll get into that a little bit more in the episode. Okay, so let's get into Operation Beifong. Opal, Bolin, and Lin travel to Zaofu with the intent of rescuing Su Yin and her family. There, they unexpectedly meet Toph, who tells them the prisoners have been moved to a prison camp out of the city. Bolin knows where they are, and they decide to free them from their underground prison the following day. In the meantime, Batar Jr., with Zhu Li's assistance, has been working on a cannon to harness and focus spirit energy. Zhu Li, however, has been working to sabotage the project, and upon Kuvira's arrival, removes a key component from the weapon, intending to blow it up. Her plans are discovered by Kuvira, however, who has Zhu Li placed in the path of the weapon. After a confrontation in the underground prison, Bolin, Lin, and Toph liberate the rest of the Beifongs. They return to the surface, where Opal informs them of the camp's current situation, and Bolin and Opal rush to save Zhu Li on Juicy, while the rest of the family fights back Kuvira's army. Meanwhile, in Republic City, Raiko is dissatisfied with Varric's reluctance to include Spirit Vine weapons in his plans. As a substitute, Korra opts to ask the spirits for help defending the city against Kuvira, but they refuse, not wishing to be used as pawns in the hands of humans. So the first thing that happens is they go and they're like on the cusp of Zaofu, and Kuvira has torn the domes off of all the places, which I don't know exactly why, because as we find out later, she's just going to use it to demonstrate her power by firing the cannon into it. So wouldn't you want the domes up so that it could show just how deadly this thing is? So that's kind of a weird move on her part. But before she is able to do that, Bolin and all of them are kind of scouting out the place, and we see a familiar face yet again. That's right, Toph shows up in this episode, and she apparently can speak to spirit vines, just like Korra can. I don't know how they're getting all these powers all of a sudden. Like, I kind of get how Korra could talk to them because she is the Avatar and kind of in touch with the spiritual side of things, but Toph just has this power now that we're just now finding out about it. It doesn't kind of wash with me. I don't understand how everyone can suddenly communicate with these spirit vines, even if Toph has been living in the swamp this entire time. It just doesn't really make sense to where everyone can just suddenly do this now. Because they've only been around for, well, I guess it's been about 3 years, but still, it doesn't make too much sense. And then we get some more of the Bolin Opal stuff. Bolin, apparently, Toph is Bolin's hero, so he's freaking out when he first sees Toph, which you think he would have kind of put that together, how Toph was related to them, so it wouldn't be like such a big surprise. But they go on for a little while with the Bolin Opal thing, and Toph thinks Bolin's stupid or whatever, and it just doesn't appeal to me at all. They could have just taken all this out, shown us a little bit more of Korra, because we have hardly any Korra in this episode. And then Opal says something that I kind of wish that I had like someone here to talk to about this, because then maybe we could kind of bounce ideas off of each other. I wish that I would have like planned that out like a year ago and had a second person here that I could speak to whenever I don't know exactly something that happened. But Opal says that the flying bison, when they're young, choose the person that they're going to bond to. And I thought that it was kind of a symbiotic thing where they both kind of had a choice. So it wasn't just the bison choosing the person. It was the person also choosing the bison. But she sets it up like she tried to get rid of this bison when it was younger. And I always thought that it was sort of a mutual thing. But I could be wrong on that. And the bison's name is Juicy because, of course, the bison's name is Juicy because we need that in the show. I also had another question from this part of the episode. Kuvira has her cannon pretty much all built. She's been using the spirit vines to get her energy to make the super weapon, basically. And Zhu Li had been helping her. So Varric had never started working on this cannon except for the little bit that he did when he blew the cannon up. And I don't even think that it was a fully functioning cannon at that point. I think that he was just trying to blow the train up. So how much time has taken place since Bolin and Varric left Kuvira? I mean, it seems like it'd be more than what I thought it was, like a couple weeks, because they've got this cannon completely operational at this point. I feel like that would have to go through many stages until it was even like ready to be on past the prototype. But they built this one cannon, and they're going to apparently just use it now as if there's going to be no problems. And we do see in this episode that there are problems. Granted, they aren't exactly what they seem. But I feel like it would have to be a lot longer than the maybe 2 weeks that I thought. Maybe even shorter time than that. Like, I didn't think hardly any time had passed since Bolin and Varric left. Maybe during the flashback or the clip show, more time is supposed to pass because Bolin and Varric are on that ship, and it would take time to travel. But it just didn't come off that way to me. So at this point, Kuvira is running a test of her cannon before they're going to display it to everybody, just to make sure everything's in order. And there is a problem with the cannon. One of the gear or some piece of it inside is all marred up, and it causes it to not be able to function. And it looks as if it were just some malfunction that could have happened, maybe some grinding gears or something got in there and just messed a piece up. And they kind of hint that it's like Zhu Li's fault. And then when they like question her, or when Kuvira questions her, Toph and them are sort of listening in. Toph says she's lying. So it's pretty much all but confirmed that Zhu Li is a double agent, as I've been saying all along. I'm actually pretty proud of myself that I called it. It's probably not that impressive, but and I don't even think that we've had sort of a real betrayal in either Avatar: The Last Airbender or Legend of Korra. And maybe you can correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems like the only betrayals have come from a guy on the bad guy's side defecting to the good guy's side. And I wish that we had a little bit more of people betraying the good guys, that it's just like out of left field and you don't even see it coming, and it's like actually shocking. But this just sort of, it screamed double agent the entire time, even though Varric didn't know about it. And again, they do the thing where Toph sort of stamps her foot on the ground, and then you get that echolocation sort of look. And then Lynn does it too, and Lynn does not use her removable like shoe. And it's kind of irritating because that's probably one of the coolest things that they introduced. And I like how there are sort of limits on what the power can do, but they just, I think they just got lazy and they didn't want to have to do it anymore. But it's such a cool thing, and we keep talking about it. I've talked about it multiple times. It's so cool the way they do that, and I just wish they'd stuck with it. And while Toph's doing this, and she says that she can feel that Zuli's lying, it got me kind of thinking, why doesn't Kuvira have someone with a similar power? It can't be all that uncommon if you have the entire Earth nation under your control, basically. She should have someone there that's kind of like sort of monitoring everybody, because Zuli just lies straight to her face and she has no clue of it. But you think that she would have found someone that could do that. It can't be that uncommon. But we cut away from that and we go back to like the camp or whatever that Bolin, Opal, Lynn, and Toph have now set up. And you get to see kind of Lynn's relationship with Toph. Bolin's over here like going crazy fanboy because I guess Toph's his hero, even though I didn't know that up until this point. He never once mentioned it. But he's geeking out over here. And Lynn has her back turned to everybody. And she's just kind of, every time Toph says something, she'll basically like mock her or whatever. And Bolin asked at one point that he's always wondered who Lynn's father was. Like, and this is definitely just to sort of jab at all of the like the theorists and whatever who have theorized that Sokka is actually Lynn's father, because Bolin doesn't care who her father is. Yeah, I mean, in the world, I know that he does technically, but I don't know why Bolin would. I don't think you'd automatically think that if you just knew someone and then you meet their mother and like, oh yeah, who's Lynn's father? No, that's not something that you would ever bring up. But the writers, I think, are just doing that to sort of jab at those theorists who think that Sokka is her father, and apparently it's some guy named Kanto. I don't know if that's like a Pokemon reference or whatever, but even though I'm not too crazy on this episode, I do kind of like that where they're just kind of subverting everybody. Now there's definitive proof that Sokka is not Lynn's father. So on their scouting mission yesterday, they found out that there's like a cavern way underneath the ground where all the Beifongs are being held. And so they just go down in the ground because they have earthbenders. It's not really that out of the way. And they're in sort of like this, it's an underground cave, but it's closed off except for one like metal door entrance on one side. And in the middle of it, suspended in the air with ropes, is a wooden cage. And did I miss something, or do earthbenders have to be touching earth in order to bend it? Because I don't think so, right? So what good does this cage do if it's suspended entirely surrounded by earth? You think that they could just create like platforms on the earth, bring them out, and then break the cage or something, right? Maybe I'm completely misguided here, but I don't think that you have to physically be touching earth in order to bend it. So I don't really get the prison. Like it makes sense to put them in a wooden cage, but why not put them out on the ocean or something like that, like we saw in Avatar? Like put them on a wooden ship in the middle of the ocean, and then there's no possible way that they can use earthbending to break out, or that earthbenders can get to them to break them out. But as it sits right now, they're surrounded by earth, and the people coming for them are earthbenders. So they come up with this ridiculous plan, how they're going to have to get up to the cage and then, I don't know exactly, break into the cage and then throw people back over to the wall in order to not make any noise. But Toph just sit there and they have to throw him, but Bolin has to sort of guide Toph in order to do this. and they could just swing the cage over. I feel like I don't see how this is that big a problem. I think that this is a bad place to put the cage, first of all, and then they come up with the most convoluted scheme to break them out. It doesn't make any sense to me. But before they can do that, we go back to Kuvira, and she's trying to get the cannon up and running, and something happened again to where it kind of powered up or something, but then a firing pin was removed, and so it's no longer functional, and apparently it could have blown up on them. And now Kuvira is kind of suspecting Zhu Li a little bit more, so she goes over and confronts her and discovers that Zhu Li is hiding this firing pin on herself. So, of course, she's basically like Magneto. She can sense the metal on you. Why would you just take the pin out and then keep it on your person? Just throw it off the cannon somewhere so that they couldn't suspect you. But now they're going to put Zhu Li in the town of Zaofu and let her get blown up when they fire the cannon into it, which this could have all been avoided if she just wasn't an idiot, because of course the metal bender is going to be able to sense the metal that you're holding on your body. I didn't really like this episode. There were too many things that I felt were just so stupid that could have been solved in such an easier way, but that happens a lot in this show. So we cut back to the prisoners, and Lin, it gets shot up from Bolin and Toph and onto the top of the cage. But then she uses her wires to get down into the cage and get them out. So why couldn't she just Spider-Man up there with her? She's got those wires on her at all times, and they're long. We've seen them do some pretty crazy things. Why did she need to be thrown up onto the cage with earthbending when she could have just sort of zipped up there? And then why do they need to throw the people back when she could just sort of swing them back over? And she even does that with Batar Sr. because he's kind of freaking out. He doesn't want to get thrown over, which why you can't blame him. I wouldn't want to get thrown at a wall and hope that someone catches me. But she grabs onto his ankle with her rope, and then they all sort of swing over there, and the guards get alerted because they make so much noise. So none of their plan, even the way that they wanted it to work, even why they were doing it that way, works out in any of the least bit. It's so convoluted and very dumb. So at this point, they've escaped, and they get everybody up topside, up to the Earth level, and we cut to Korra, and she enters the spirit world. She's not hardly in this episode at all, but we have to have her because the show's named after her. So she goes into the spirit world to kind of try to get some of the spirits onto her side to help fight Kuvira. And she uses all the excuses like, oh, they're attacking the spirit vines, so you need to come help us. But there's this one like snake spirit, I guess. First of all, why does it get to speak for all the spirits? Because it just pipes up and says, no, we're not going to do this. None of the other spirits are like, hey, maybe I want to help. This one spirit is like, hey, we're not going to get involved in the affairs of men, basically. They're basically like the elves in Lord of the Rings. They're kind of non-interventionist, but they all disappear, and so Korra is completely pointless in this episode because we already basically knew that the spirits didn't want to sort of get involved in any human affairs. So she is in this episode for no reason. So we go back to Toph, because Toph has now made it apparent that she does not want to stop Kuvira. She just came to get her kid back and her family, but now she's just going to head back to the swamp. So she makes sure everybody's safe, but then they go off. But Bolin has it in his head now that just because Zhu Li was lying to Kuvira earlier that she is, in fact, a double agent, and they find out that she is in Zaofu, so they have to go save her. And Bolin's prepared to just do it by himself, but of course, as happens, he says, no, I got to go, or I'm going to go alone. And everybody is just like, oh, we got to go help him, which is actually a good thing. But if they didn't do that all the time, it would work better. So Bolin heads off, and Opal takes off after him on her bison. And so they're going to go into Zaofu and try to save Zhu Li before they fire the cannon into the city. And while they're doing this, Su Yin and then the two twin brothers are going to kind of go after Kuvira and try to stop her so that they don't get Bolin and Opal blown up, basically. And they end up doing this. They kind of misdirect the cannon a little bit, which if it's that fickle, because they just sort of bend the earth underneath the rail that the cannon's sitting on, if that's all it takes to kind of divert the cannon's path, because it still goes off, but it just shoots up a little bit higher than it should have and basically bores a tunnel through the mountain. So they basically don't have to do hardly anything to take this cannon out of commission. So Bolin and Opal kind of narrowly avoid being hit by the cannon. But then Opal and Kuvira get into a fight, and they did something that was super cool that I think that they could have done more. While Su Yin's fighting, she takes a panel off of the cannon because she's up on top of the cannon, sort of getting into it with Kuvira. She takes a panel to use as a shield from Kuvira's slats that she's shooting at her. And after she's done using it as a shield, it forms around her body as armor. And I thought that was so cool the way she did that. And I wish they would have used more things like that because it just seems seamless. I don't know exactly why she needs armor, but it was really cool the way she did it. So the battle goes on for a while, and it looks like Su Yin's up, and then you get that obligatory moment where the tide turns and the smoke clears, and then they're all surrounded in a circle, and I think it's Lin, the twins, and Su Yin are all kind of, they're surrounded by these mechs and everything, and you're like, oh no, what's going to happen? But you know what's going to happen. Toph's going to show back up because she said she wasn't going to, but she had a change of heart or whatever, and she comes back, and that's exactly what happens. Toph comes, and we get kind of a cool scene where Toph bends all the earth around this circle that they're all standing in, kind of like in the Lord of the Rings, Return of the King, where at the very end, after the ring goes into Mount Doom, all of the earth kind of goes, and the orcs fall into the earth, and where Aragorn and Legolas and all them are, that's sort of unharmed. It's kind of like that, and Toph basically disarms all the mechs. But I think that they should have shown just how powerful Toph is. I think that she should have come up and basically just raised the ground and just taken the cannon and crushed it. Just like come in and just shown how super powerful she is and just demolished everything. I think that would have been the way to go. As it stands, she still kind of saved everybody, but she didn't really do anything to deter Kuvira, which I think was her kind of her outlook on it anyway, where she was going to save people, but she didn't really care what Kuvira was doing unless it was affecting her or people she cares about. So that's basically it for the first episode, Operation Beifong. We do get at the very end of the episode kind of like a shock moment as the credits roll, where like Kuvira is going to attack in 2 weeks, and the music swells up. But that's not very surprising. You knew it was going to happen. So supposedly they have 2 weeks before Kuvira is going to come. That wraps up Operation Beifong. Let's get into the 2 pieces of great trivia that they have for this episode on the wiki. First, we have this episode features 3 generations of the Beifong family. How exciting, right? And then the next piece of trivia is this is Opal's last speaking role in the series. So, spoiler alert: Opal will not speak in the next 3 episodes, I guess. So that pretty much wraps up this episode. No big controversies in this episode. It was a pretty dull episode, albeit a few cool parts. But overall, it's kind of forgettable. So I'm going to take a quick break and then come back with the next episode, Kuvira's Gambit. And we are back. So let's just go ahead and jump straight into Kuvira's Gambit. Kuvira reveals her army her intention to reclaim the United Republic of Nations, telling them it rightfully belongs to the Earth Empire. After the announcement, she talks with Batar Jr. about their wedding and love. Bolin, the Beifongs, and Zhu Li reach Republic City, where the latter alerts Team Avatar and President Raiko of Kuvira's imminent attack. The city rushes to prepare, evacuating citizens and mobilizing the United forces. Zhu Li tries to reconcile with Varric, but is disgusted to find that he still treats her as an assistant. Team Avatar attempts to ambush Kuvira's spirit energy cannon and discovers it is mounted on the arm of a giant mecha suit controlled by Kuvira. They barely escape its attacks and race back to tell Republic City of the development. But Kuvira arrives mere hours later, and after a single show of force by Kuvira's weapon, Raiko surrenders the city to her. As Baatar Jr. is en route to discuss the terms of the surrender, Korra, Kai, and Tenzin's family kidnap him, taking him to a Future Industries warehouse, intending to force him to tell them how to defeat the weapon. After Korra and Suyin unsuccessfully try to persuade him to help them, Korra threatens to hide him from Kuvira for the rest of his life, and he gives in to their demands. Baatar Jr. radios Kuvira and asks her to retreat from the United Republic. While seeming to oblige her over the radio, she traces the signal to the warehouse, and firing the weapon at it, destroys it. All right, so first thing I want to speak about in this episode is Kuvira actually has some human emotions. We get to see it when she's talking to Baatar Jr. at the beginning, where I think she legitimately loves him and wants this come to a conclusion so they can get married, is what she says, and then they can rule over the Earth Empire. It's really refreshing to actually see some sort of humanity in Kuvira, because this entire time she's played up to be just this really evil figure who only looks out for herself and doesn't really care how many people she has to kill in order to get what she wants. But I think that they kind of do a good job at sort of dialing all that back and showing that she does actually care about Baatar Jr. It's not just some ruse. And at this point in the episode, even though I turned out to be wrong, maybe I wish that they did play it out like this. I thought that Baatar Jr. was going to die, because we actually got Kuvira and they were hugging at the very beginning of the episode, and we got to see that she was really content with just Baatar Jr. there. So I really thought they were going to kill him off. I think that they should, and I've got a couple thoughts on that later on in the episode. But let's get down to Zhu Li's glasses, because I noticed something in this episode that I had not noticed before. Zhu Li comes back and she sort of lays out the plan that Kuvira is going to use this weapon. And then they go and Bolin takes her to see Varric. And I noticed something about her that I hadn't noticed before. Her glasses don't have arms. Is that what you call legs? Whatever the things that stick off the side of the glasses are, I don't know. I'm not a glasstician or whatever somebody who studies glasses is. They're just a frame, and they sit perfectly on her nose as if that were not a problem and physics don't matter. But I'm assuming that physics do matter, just because we have to have some reality to ground the show in. I think that that's actually the most mind-boggling thing about the show is she's moving around and stuff, and those glasses are just sitting on her nose. I can never get glasses to sit on my face correctly, even when they do have arms or whatever you call those things. Maybe that's just because my face is misshapen after my horrible accident. But you'd think that they would just fall off because there's nothing to hold them onto the face. Ear hanger things, is that something to do? It has to be some part of the body, because isn't that also weird? I'm going to go off on a little bit of tangent. Why do tables have legs? Why do tables have legs? I have legs that move and propel me, but why do tables also have legs that are just stationary pieces of wood, metal, other various materials that you can build tables out of? They're not similar at all, other than they're, kind of the same shape and hold things up off the ground, but they're not really legs, Anyway, that's just my thoughts on that. Back to the episode. Actually, you know what? No, it's not okay. Tables can't have legs. I'm just going to say it, okay? I believe that tables shouldn't have things called legs. Come up with a different word. We got so many words in the English language. We can afford to have a few more that are better descriptors. And I'm actually kind of mad about this, because it kind of, what are my legs? Chopped liver? No, they're legs. Tables don't get legs. I'm just going to say it. I don't want to say that your legs have to move to be legs, because then all the disabled people out there, I'm very sorry if I've offended you. But I don't think that we can call just some inanimate piece of wood that holds a circular thing above the ground, or rectangle, depending on what you're into table-wise. I don't think that they should have the same distinction of legs as I do. And I could spend 10 more minutes on this, but it's not interesting the least bit, so I am actually going to get back to the episode now. So we cut back. Actually, you know what? No. It's kind of infuriating how these tables, they think they can come in here and just take the word legs. Like, who do they think they are? They can't even think. They're okay. We cut back to Prince Wu, and they're forcing some sort of transformation on him now, as of course they would. It's not built up to at all. He just suddenly is this calm leader, because apparently Raiko says that, hey, we're going to evacuate the city, and it's mandatory. It's a mandatory evacuation. So Mako gets on the airwaves, and he's very calmly sort of spelling out exactly what people need to do. They need to turn into their handbook, and they need to follow the guidelines or whatever. And they're getting a whole bunch of calls in, and people are like freaking out. So Prince Wu just sort of says, hey, Mako, get up. And then he sits down and speaks to people and sort of calms them down and tells them that the people of Republic City are winners or whatever. And they're setting him up. Oh, hey, maybe you would actually be a good king. But this is the only instance of it. And they didn't have anything build up to this or at all. He just switches. And I didn't like that. I don't like him. I don't like the fact that tables have legs. So Tenzin returns to his home, because apparently they're going to set up Air Temple Island as kind of a base for President Raiko. And Pema is saying that, oh, they're not going to actually go anywhere, and they want to help. So I don't know if Pema understands what mandatory means, because that means that you can't decide to stay. That's not up to you. It's a mandatory evacuation. You have to get out. You're probably going to get killed because there's a giant spirit weapon coming to destroy you. So, Pema, take your kids. You can probably leave Janora because she's actually worth something. But get out of the city, please. You got a little kid. You don't need to be staying around with spirit weapon energy. But they set up President Raiko on Air Temple Island because they say that's probably the most strategic place for him to be. I disagree. It's on an island. If you're surrounded, you cannot go anywhere. That's what an island is. And it is a small island. There's no place to go back to, especially coming from people who have ships and the like the airships and stuff. Don't put yourself on a small island where there's no place to retreat to. At this point, Korra has it in her head that she's going to head off and somehow stop Kuvira, even though Kuvira has bested her. She's going to go off and take down Kuvira before they have a chance to get up there, because at this point, we still think that Kuvira is going to be coming in 2 weeks. So Korra and them set off on a flying bison, and it turns out that Kuvira is not going to be there in just 2 weeks. She's going to be there in the very near future, because they thought that she was going to have to travel by the rail system to haul this weapon. But turns out that's not quite the case, because they have conveniently also built a 25-story tall mech suit that houses this cannon on its arm. So again, I have to reiterate, how long has taken place between Varrick and Bolin leaving? How did they have time to build this giant mech suit that Zhu Li didn't know about, Varrick didn't know about? Apparently Baatar Jr. just built it. And even if let's say that they had the mech suit, they were planning on using it for something completely different, and then they built the cannon. How did they get the technology and whatever to affix it to the arm of this mech? Because we get to see that they're putting these Spirit Vine cartridges in every shot they fire, and that's all happening inside this mech. So this would take longer than however time they had. I don't know how they did it. They're the smartest, fastest people in the world. But Korra and them fly up on this giant mech, and of course they're immediately spotted, and they get shot at. And they run away in the stupidest way possible. They go directly away from the mech. So they just fly in a straight line in the opposite direction of where the mech is. Of course, they're going to almost get shot. They could have literally flown in any other direction, laterally, strafe the mech, just like go around it in circles, and it wouldn't have been a problem because they wouldn't have been able to be hit. Because this thing, I don't think is that fast and that accurate to that point. But they literally go in the worst direction possible. I don't know if it's entirely the Prometheus school of running away. I think that's for falling objects, but it's very, very close to that. And another thing I have to point out about this mech suit, all the smaller mechs, I believe, have sort of a wheel-based mode of transportation. So all the like single person, they don't actually have legs that are walking around. This mech has two large legs that it's walking on, which I don't know why the mech needs to be humanoid. They could have gone with any design. Had this cannon not on an arm, in a more strategic place where it just rotated around the top or something, so that they had better flexibility, better accuracy. But they can just AT-AT this mech suit. All they have to do is fly a flying bison with Lynn or whatever with her wire and just wrap up the legs, and then it won't be able to walk. It'll just have to fall over. So it's a very bad design flaw. I guess that they only had 2 weeks to come up with the design, so maybe they couldn't do anything better than that. But, I mean, come on. Don't put legs on things. Just make it a tank to where you literally cannot knock it over. I should really start charging the villains in this show a fee for all the help that I have imparted onto them. Just the dumb mistakes that they make. It's really infuriating, actually. So Kuvira arrives at Republic City, and she sets up her entire army, and then the mech suit comes up behind. And I noticed something in the Republic City army, because General Iroh is there. He has brought his, I don't even remember what the army's called, but he's got his troops there. And I noticed that they color coded the infantry, so they have green, red, and blue outfits on them, which I don't think that you would entirely want that. Wouldn't you want people to be surprised by what element's going to be bent at them? I feel like that would just add just a little bit more to not really the mystique, but kind of give them an upper hand, because you don't know exactly what's coming. But if a guy in red clothing comes at me, I'm probably going to get fire bent at, or green clothes, earthbending water with blue. They should probably just have a standard uniform. That way you can kind of throw people off guard. But I digress. The next thing I have written down in my notes is no ... And I do not remember what that is in reference to. Racking my brain right now. It's something that made me so sad that I did not have words to express, and I had to use ellipses for a dramatic effect. And I do not remember what I'm trying to recall there. At this point, Kuvira is in position, and she fires off a couple shots from her cannon, and it destroys some of the ships surrounding Air Temple Island, some of the Republic City Army, or whatever it's called. I think it's United Forces Army or something like that. She destroys some of those ships, and immediately President Raiko's like, okay, we probably can't do anything about this. I'm going to surrender. So Kuvira says that she's going to send Bartar Jr. over to sort of negotiate the terms of the surrender. So it looks like Kuvira's just up and won, but Korra gets in her head that she's not going to just sit down and take that. So she goes and talks to Bolin, and I think Asami's there, and Tenzin's there, and all of our friends in this show show up. And they decide that they're not going to do that. What they're going to do is capture Bartar Jr., because he supposedly designed this mech suit, so they need to find out its weaknesses. And this is the quickest, most efficient thing that anyone on this show has ever done, because they just go in there, get Batar Jr. and get out. Like it's nothing. There's nothing happens along the way to screw them up like happens in every other time they try to rescue someone or take someone out or something like that. There's no hiccups. They just do it and it's over. So they capture Batar Jr. and they're trying to appeal to his sense of humanity to get him to flip on Kuvira, which obviously that's not going to work. But it takes a long time for anyone to even notice Batar Jr. is gone. And in this time, Korra tries to sort of talk him off of Kuvira. And then when that doesn't work, she kind of threatens him in the Avatar state. And he just like, oh, I recognize an empty threat when I see one. And she just gives up right there. Break his wrists or something like that. Show him that you actually mean business. But then Su Yin comes over, Su Yin being his mother, and kind of tries to appeal to him like, hey, you're breaking up the family. We'd all like you to just come home. And he says, Kuvira is my family now. And so it doesn't look like he's going to break. And then Korra has the dumbest threat of all time. And I wish it would have paid off more because it's just kind of stupid. She says that Kuvira may take the city and then she'll probably go and hunt the Avatar down. But wherever Korra goes, she's going to take Batar Jr. and he'll never see Kuvira again. And this kind of breaks him, which I don't think it should have. And he ends up, after they find that he's been missing, he calls Kuvira, or they call him up and say, hey, Korra said this. She says she's going to keep me away from you. Republic City's not worth it. Just sort of back down, and then we can just go back. We've got all this other land that we could use. Let's just be in love together someplace else, and we'll just let them have this. It's not worth it. And Kuvira says basically the same thing. Yeah, this isn't worth getting between our love. And then she points the cannon at Batar Jr., which she'd been tracking the call this entire time to find out where it came from. And she shoots the warehouse that they're in, trying to kill everybody. And that's how this episode ends. We think that people might be dead because she pointed this giant spirit cannon at them. And so that gets to what I wanted to talk about the way this went down. I think that a cooler way to do it, and it would have gone in line with my theory about how Batar Jr. was going to die, is if after Korra made this threat, then after Batar is talking to Kuvira, he says something along the lines of, Korra said that she is going to just take me with her and I will never see you again. And then he does say in the show, and that's not a life I want to live. So I think what would have been a lot cooler than how we got it was for him to say, I don't want to live this way. Kuvira, pull the trigger, or something along those lines. And he knows that she's been tracking the call. And then he tells her to kill him because he doesn't want to live that life and he would rather die than be apart from her. And I think that would have been such a better way to end this with him. And I don't even think he needs to actually die, but for him to just say that instead of him backing down at the very last minute, because I don't feel like that would be in his character. I don't feel like he would give up whatever they were hoping to achieve in order for this, even though it does kind of make sense. And they're trying to show that he cares more about Kuvira than Kuvira. Kuvira mostly cares about her goal. She still, I think, loves him, but is willing to sacrifice all of that to achieve this because she's in it way too deep now. But I think it would have been a lot cooler if he would have kind of stuck to his guns and said, hey, Korra, you're going to keep me away from her. I don't want to do that. I would rather die. And I think that would be cool. But that is the end of this episode. What's going to happen? Is Korra going to be killed in the spirit blast? We don't know. Probably. I mean, I would assume so. This is a pretty powerful ray. I would assume that the next two episodes are just going to be like black screens because everything's over and Kuvira's won. But we don't know. We'll have to stick around. Let's do a little bit of trivia before we wrap this episode up. The scene where Batar Jr. is captured was originally written to be much longer, but later cut down by Michael Dante DiMartino and Tim Hedrick. Okay, so that makes sense. Apparently, they had more into that sort of where they captured Batar, but they cut it out for some reason. I don't know why. It really fell out of place with all the other kidnappings and rescuings that have taken place in these two series. Nothing went wrong. They just went in and got him. So that explains it a little bit. The liquid metal orbs inside the giant mecha suit are from Su Yin's meteorite collection. I don't know what that means. I'm going to be perfectly honest. I don't know of any liquid metal orbs. If you guys have any idea what that is, you can talk to me about that. Brian Konietzko stated that Kuvira did love Batar Jr. despite her actions. Yeah, of course. They did a really good job conveying that she did actually love him, even though she was willing to sacrifice him. So that did come through. Brian Konietzko ships Mako with the female radio operator from Republic City's communications room. No, but Mako and Korra are going to be together at the end because they've set that up this entire time, right? That's how things are going to end. Guys, right? That's how they're going to end. Well, that's how this episode's going to end. Thank you so much for listening. As always, you can get a hold of us with email at boysintheiceberg@gmail.com, or you can check us out on Twitter at boysintheberg. As always, I've been Caleb Bader, and we will see you here next week.
Bye.